One thing I did notice about the whole sex thing is that sex is a lot like Star Wars. So think of sex as Star Wars. You go round and round.
Star Wars The Phantom Menace was the most disappointing thing since my son.
Recently, I've been getting bored with making videos harassing YouTubers, and because of YouTube's most recent terms of service update, I'm at a risk of losing my channel. I mean, it's not like YouTube doesn't write their rules very vaguely to the point where it only makes sense to bots, right? I guess this is a perfect opportunity for me to change up my content and instead harass movies, which, you know, totally isn't as saturated as commentary is nowadays. And what better way to start than with the franchise that changed cinematography forever, Star Wars. Today, I'm going to be going over why I think Star Wars movies are not good. That means spoilers for all these movies, so click away if you don't want spoilers. Still here? Alright. Let's begin. So when I was a young boy, I learned about Star Wars. My first real interaction with the series other than seeing my classmates with Star Wars merchandise was when I got LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga for my 7th birthday. I played the shit out of the game to the point where I almost got to 100% completion. And then shortly after I beat the last mission in the game, I found out that Star Wars was a movie franchise. So I watched The Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and The Phantom Menace in that specific order since we didn't own the first movie on DVD until shortly after I watched the third. I do remember enjoying the prequels, but that's probably because they were just like the game. Yeah, it's kinda dumb, but cut me some slack. I was a retarded 7-year-old. Luckily, however, the game wasn't exactly the same as the movies, so I was surprised by some scenes like Qui-Gon fighting Darth Maul on Tatooine in The Phantom Menace, and Yoda fighting Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith. A few months later, I watched the original trilogy, and I enjoyed it just as much as I did the prequels. And just like before, there were scenes that really surprised me, such as the scene where Darth Vader deflects all of Han's bullets with his hands in The Empire Strikes Back, and when Luke and Vader fight in Return of the Jedi, since in the game you control both Luke and or Vader as you fight against Palpatine. Overall, I loved these movies when I was younger, and I definitely have quite the nostalgia for them. But throughout time, specifically after witnessing the monstrosity that is the third trilogy, I really just started to notice the many issues the Star Wars movies have. Obviously, the third trilogy is f***ing abysmal. I think that Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver, and the majority of the cast are pretty terrible actors, with the exception of Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher. The story and pacing are atrocious, especially in The Last Jedi. And not to mention, this trilogy just doesn't know how lightsabers work. To give you an example, towards the end of The Force Awakens, Kylo clearly strikes Finn with his lightsaber straight down the middle of his back and somehow isn't dead. The same thing happens in a couple of minutes while Rey fights Kylo. She strikes him straight in the face with a lightsaber, and it only caused a fucking mark on his face. This makes no sense because near the end of the beginning portion of The Last Jedi, we see Rey being able to use the lightsaber to cut through a stone pillar easily. How is it that a lightsaber can easily slice through a stone pillar but not slice somebody's body in half? God damn it, Disney, why don't you understand how lightsabers work? And oh my fucking god, I cannot stand the throne room scene, or the snow planet scene for that matter. Look at this scene and keep your eyes focused on the guards. Like, what the f*** is this? And especially towards the end of the movie where Finn is about to sacrifice himself to help save the rebels, and then of course, Rose has to ruin it all and says,
"It's not about fighting what we hate, it's about saving what we love."
Okay, but you ruined Finn's opportunity to gain some moral ground. It would have been very climactic to see Finn sacrifice himself, and no, I'm not saying I wish he died in the movie just because he's black. This has nothing to do with racism. Terrible movie, my disappointment is immeasurable, 2 out of 10. The only reason it's a 2 out of 10 is that it was Carrie Fisher's last movie. As of me writing this script, I have not yet seen The Rise of Skywalker, but I bet it's going to be a train wreck just like the last movie. So when I see it, I don't have any high expectations. Now, believe it or not, it's not just the third trilogy that's not considered good in my opinion. The prequels and even some of the original trilogy isn't very good. The The prequel trilogy is moderately adequate at the very best, but that's mainly because of the Revenge of the Sith. The acting and dialogue weren't the best, and the only memorable parts in the first two are undoubtedly for the wrong reason. In Revenge of the Sith, however, you've got Obi-Wan fighting General Grievous, the Jedi being f***ing slaughtered, Mace Windu fighting Palpatine, and of course, the climactic fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin, which I still think looks amazing to this day. I love how it ends on a depressing tone and sets up everything for A New Hope. And if A New Hope wasn't called Episode 4 and there was only one prequel movie, I think Revenge of the Sith would be very fitting. 3 out of 10 for The Phantom Menace, 3.25 out of 10 for The Attack of the Clones, and 7.5 out of 10 for Revenge of the Sith. The original trilogy is the one that every Star Wars fan says it's not just the best Star Wars trilogy, but also the
Greatest trilogy in movie history.
I could debate you on that with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but that'll be for another video. Like many others, I still like the original trilogy, but only because of A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. They do a really good job of establishing the Star Wars universe and storyline. The casting and characters are great, since I can't imagine anyone else replacing people like Luke or Han. Although apparently George Lucas originally tried to get Christopher Walken playing Han Solo, since Harrison Ford was already in American Graffiti, another movie by George Lucas that released a few years before Star Wars, and didn't want to reuse any of the same actors. But I'm very glad that we got Harrison Ford, because thanks to his great acting, Han Solo is my favorite Star Wars character. When I think of Star Wars, these two movies are what comes to my mind, especially The Empire Strikes Back. I bet it was amazing to experience this movie for the first time in 1980 and just being in shock and or confusion hearing Darth Vader say to Luke,
"No, I am your father."
The Empire Strikes Back as a whole has just left an undeniable impact on Star Wars, and it's for that reason why it's my favorite Star Wars movie. 9.5 out of 10 for A New Hope, and 10 out of 10 for The Empire Strikes Back. Return of the Jedi is alright. It's pretty good for a bit up until Endor, where around half of the movie takes place. This might piss some people off, but I've always thought that the Ewoks were a really stupid idea. I mean, just think about it for a second. They're man-eating teddy bears. It really just comes off as trying to target more towards younger kids, which is now the majority of the Star Wars fandom besides all the bums in their mid-30s and 40s. If the Ewoks were instead replaced with something like trolls, goblins, or even rock biters, I think it would make this movie a lot better and come off as less pestering towards young kids. I should also mention that this movie has changed a lot throughout its re-releases, ranging from Sebastian Shaw's eyebrows being digitally erased, which I think looks fine either way, the extended ending with Hayden Christensen, and Jabba's Palace. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have seen the re-release version, which is the one with the song Jedi Rocks, but for those who haven't seen the 1983 version, I'll just play the two and I'll let you decide which one is better. I mean, they both aren't anything spectacular, but I'd much rather have this instead of this. Get the f*** out of my face, you f***ing Return of the Jedi gets a 7 out of 10.
But Captain, what about the Star Wars stories?
Well, I was getting to those, so could you please shut the f*** up, you little shit? Anyways, now let's talk about the Star Wars stories. Rogue One and Solo. Rogue One is alright. I hardly remember anything from the movie besides that one Darth Vader scene towards the end. That was pretty cool to watch. Rogue One gets a 5 out of 10. Solo is slightly below average. I feel like it shits on Han's character since the guy who played Han didn't really do the best. And on top of that, the movie is very forgettable. The only things I remember from the movie are the first 7 minutes, Donald Glover, or Childish Gambino, as Lando Calrissian, and the big twist at the end where it's revealed that Emilia Clarke friend-zoned Han so that she could ride Darth Maul's dick. How was he alive after being chopped in half by Obi-Wan in The Phantom Menace? Well, to be completely honest, I don't know. From what I've heard, it has something to do with Star Wars The Clone Wars, which I never bothered watching since the terrible character design has prevented me from even watching more than 1 or 2 episodes. Jesus Christ, Anakin, what have they done to you? Anyways, Solo gets a 4.5 out of 10. Well, it looks like I've briefly gone over every Star Wars movie except for The Rise of Skywalker. And by now, you've probably come to the conclusion that I don't dislike all Star Wars movies, or hate any of them for that matter. Except for The Phantom Menace and The Last Jedi. And you'd be correct. I just personally find many of these movies to be overrated since the majority of the Star Wars fan base praise these movies like they're the greatest films of all time. And like I said earlier, I could debate you on that with the Lord of the Rings trilogy. If you were to say that the Star Wars movies are some of the most influential of all time, that's more of a statement I would agree with. With that being said, I think the only good movies from the Star Wars franchise are Revenge of the Sith, A New Hope, and The Empire Strikes Back. Every other movie in the franchise is moderately adequate at the very best, and f***ing abysmal at the very worst. And hey, if you disagree with me, feel free to express your thoughts on the Star Wars movies in the comments, since I'm very curious to hear what you all think. I know this video is a bit different from normal, but I want to try switching things up since I'm starting to get bored with commentaries, and as I said at the beginning of this video, I'm at a risk of losing my channel. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. And now if you excuse me, I gotta deal with some pissed off Star Wars fans in my comments if there even are any after this video goes out. See ya!